In this episode, we talk about the Great Nicobar Project proposed by the government and the opposition that it is facing. We also talk about leaders of BJP talking about the imposition of emergency in 1975. But first, we talk about water shortage in the national capital. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Apart from reeling from soaring temperatures and heat waves, Delhi is experiencing an acute water shortage once again this summer. Last month, the AAP government in Delhi even approached the Supreme Court regarding the issue, specifically accusing the BJP-led government in Haryana of stopping the Yamuna's water supply to the national capital. In fact, Delhi's Water Minister Atishi, who began an indefinite hunger strike last Friday to protest against the Haryana government, was hospitalized after her blood sugar levels dropped to 36. To understand the actual reasons behind this crisis and how Delhi obtains its water supply, we have Indian Express's Abhinaya Harigovind joining us. Abhinaya, begin by telling us from where does Delhi get its water?
So Delhi largely gets its river water from three sources. It gets water from the Yamuna, it gets water from the Ganga, and it gets water from the Ravi Beas rivers. So from the Yamuna and the Ravi Beas rivers, water reaches Delhi through two channels, one that's called the carrier lined channel and another that's called the Delhi sub-branch. And from the Ganga, it reaches Delhi from UP through the upper Ganga canal. So the Yamuna and Ravi Beas waters reach Delhi from Haryana through these two channels, and the Ganga water reaches Delhi from UP through the upper Ganga canal. So that is most part of Delhi's water supply, which is about a little more than 80%. More than 10% of Delhi's water supply also comes from groundwater, which is tube wells that the Delhi Jal Board has set up along the floodplains of the river Yamuna, close to where the river enters Delhi. So there the groundwater levels are really high, and the Delhi Jal Board has set up tube wells to be able to draw groundwater from there and augment the city's supply. So this is where Delhi gets its water from. Some part of its supply also comes directly from the river itself, as in from the Yamuna. In addition to what is allocated to Delhi through the two channels that reach Delhi from Haryana, some part of Delhi's water supply from the Yamuna is drawn directly from the river itself.
And although this is a crisis that the city faces almost every summer, what exactly has triggered the problem this time?
So this year, Delhi's been seeing a particularly brutal summer when it comes to heatwave conditions. We've been seeing heatwave days from about May 17th onwards, and the demand is particularly high this time around. The other problem is that parts of northwest India, most parts of northwest India, including Delhi, have seen a deficit in rainfall, both in May and in June so far. So as a result, the river itself is mostly dry in parts of Delhi and in Haryana.
And we understand that some water treatment plants in Delhi, including the one in North Delhi's Wazirabad, were functioning below its capacity this time. Could you tell us a bit about that?
So Delhi has 9 water treatment plants, and out of these 9 water treatment plants, 2 right now are producing water well below their intended capacity. So these 2 water treatment plants are the Wazirabad and Chandraval water treatment plants. While there are other water treatment plants as well that rely on water from the Yamuna, the Wazirabad and Chandraval water treatment plants, in addition to the water that they receive from the CLC or the DSB, they also draw water directly from the river itself. Because of how close they are to the river, the Wazirabad and Chandraval water treatment plants are located very close to the banks of the river. So they also draw water directly from the river itself. So according to the DJB's, the Delhi Jal Board bulletins from earlier this month, for example, about 20 days ago, about 151 million gallons per day of water was being drawn from the river itself for supply. So these 2 plants have largely been hit compared to the others. The others are mostly producing water as per their intended capacity or a little above their intended capacity.
And Abhinaya, how has the city typically dealt with this issue in the past? What are the measures that the Delhi government takes?
So the Delhi Jal Board usually puts out a summer action plan to deal with shortage in the summer because of increased demand. It tries to rationalize supply, which it tries to ensure that water reaches certain underground reservoirs. It also tries to ensure maintenance of the water treatment plants and proper maintenance of the pipeline network a little ahead of the summer, because we tend to lose some part of our supply in transit, either through leakage or when some of that water is pilfered. So maintenance is one part. This year, how they've dealt with is a little different. They've imposed a fine. They're now imposing a fine of 2,000 rupees for water wastage. So this year, I think how they're dealing with it is a little different. But yeah, this is usually how they've dealt with this crisis.
Also, earlier this month, the Supreme Court directed both Himachal Pradesh and Haryana to assist the capital. Could you tell us what exactly the court had said?
So the Supreme Court had asked Himachal Pradesh to release about 137 cusecs of surplus water that Himachal Pradesh had said was available with it. And the court wanted Haryana to ensure that this water flows smoothly towards Delhi. So this was what they had asked for initially. In a subsequent hearing, the Himachal Pradesh government has told the Supreme Court that it doesn't actually have that excess 137 cusecs of water to supply. So then the Supreme Court has now asked Delhi to approach the Upper Yamuna River Board to seek additional water supply. The allocation of Yamuna water to the basin states of the Yamuna is on the basis of a Memorandum of Understanding from 1994, which specifies how much each state, which is Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Delhi, will receive from the Yamuna. And this Memorandum of Understanding, the implementation of this MOU is under the Upper Yamuna River Board. So the Supreme Court has now asked the Delhi government to approach the Upper Yamuna River Board to seek additional water supply.
And besides this, there have also been reports about damaged pipes in the city. How has that compounded the problem?
So every water supply network loses some extent of its water in transit. So according to Delhi's economic survey from the 2023-24 financial year, Delhi loses about 58% of the water that it produces as non-revenue water. So non-revenue water means that the water is not billed. It could either be pilfered or it could be lost in transit as leakage. So this is partly because, the pipeline network in Delhi is old. It has its problems. There have been reports of leaks earlier this month. Yeah, so that is a fairly substantial, 58% loss as non-revenue water is what Delhi deals with.
And this time, of course, the Aam Aadmi Party has been blaming the BJP government in Haryana. So talk about the political fallout of this crisis.
So the Aam Aadmi Party has blamed the BJP government in Haryana for not releasing the water that is due to Delhi. In the last couple of days, they have said that Delhi is being deprived of about 100 million gallons per day of its rightful share of water. So that's partly what the Aam Aadmi Party has been saying about the shortage, that Haryana has not been releasing what is due to Delhi. Haryana on its part has been saying that it is in fact releasing Delhi's share of water, except that Delhi is not able to manage its own water supply issues, and that it has attributed the shortfall in Delhi to, one, the rising demand, and two, mismanagement of water within Delhi. So this is largely the problem within. So now Delhi's ministers have also written to the Lieutenant Governor. They have also written to the Prime Minister asking the Haryana government to release the water that is due to Delhi.
And next we talk about the Great Nicobar Island, which is the southernmost and largest of Nicobar Islands situated in the Bay of Bengal.
And the Great Nicobar Islands is spread over 910 square kilometers of area. It is not densely populated. It is largely made up of tropical rainforests.
That's Indian Express's Nikhil Ghanekar.
As of now, as per government records, there are around 5,000 roughly people living on the island, of which around 10% is made up by the Shompen group of tribes people, which fall in the particularly vulnerable group of tribes, for which the government has targeted welfare programs and are supposed to provide or take specific measures for them. The other set of population is made up of the Great Nicobarese tribe, and also settlers from the mainland who had been here earlier in the past. They make up the other proportion of the population.
And besides this, he says that the island is also home to several endangered wildlife species, including the Nicobar megapod bird and the great leatherback marine turtle. But this is not it. The region also holds crucial importance for India's security concerns, especially considering China's attempts to expand its influence in the area. This is why the Indian government has introduced the Great Nicobar Island Project, a 72,000 crore infrastructure upgrade. The project aims to provide India with a strategic advantage but has raised concerns among civil society groups and conservationists. To learn more about the project and its potential impact, we speak to Nikhil in this segment. Nikhil, what is the government's plan as far as the Nicobar Islands are concerned, and what is the Great Nicobar Island Project?
So the Great Nicobar Island Project is something that was the brainchild of the Niti Aayog, and they had commissioned reports through private consultants and back in 2021, if I'm not wrong, and they essentially wanted to see what could be the potential of this island in terms of major infrastructure project. So what does this infrastructure project entail? So let's look at that. Number one, they want to build a massive transshipment port which will handle container cargo traffic. Then they want to build a functional airport. They want to also in the future build maybe a metro system. They also want to build a power plant there. So that in a nutshell is what the major infrastructure push looks like. And it is pegged at 72,000 crores, the cost of the whole project. As of now, it has already received some major clearances which relate to the environment ministry, such as the forest clearance, the environment clearance. They've also basically had to do some social impact assessment because of the impact that it will have on the tribes people there. But the social impact assessment hearings are yet to happen. So as far as regulatory clearances are concerned, what we discussed has already been accorded, the forest and environment clearance. And the government, as far as our sources tell us, is looking to open the tenders for this massive project sometime in the next 3 months.
And what kind of an impact will the project have on the island, both in terms of the people who live there and its environment?
So that's an interesting point, because as far as the impacts of these projects are concerned, if I can talk that. So let's start from how much area is required. As I mentioned earlier, this island is spread over 910 square kilometers. Of this, the project alone needs 160 square kilometer, which is largely situated on the southern and southeastern tip of the island. And the total island itself, I mean, the chain of islands is 8,000 square kilometers, Andaman and Nicobar included. Nicobar is 910, and of this 160 square kilometers is just this project. So naturally, when you have such a large project going on, there has to be some kind of impact in terms of ecological impact, social impact, impact on the culture of people who are not exactly living on the mainland. They are tribes, so they are not in close contact with people living either on the mainland or even on the island itself. There are geological impacts, because as everyone would know, that this chain of islands, rather including Great Nicobar, was severely impacted by the Great Tsunami of December 26, 2004. Now, let's begin with that aspect itself. The geological impact is that because it lies near a very sensitive fault line, the Earth's plates are constantly moving below the coast here, and it's also close to Sumatra Island, which was the epicenter of the Great Tsunami. Secondly, this island saw subsidence, which means that some of the areas where the project is planned, those islands sunk a little. So people have raised concerns about that.
And you mentioned that the tribals that reside on the island will also be impacted. Could you talk a bit more about how they will be affected by the project?
So that is one of the major concerns, because there is a tribal reserve which is part of this project area, and the people who live there have alleged that they were not given proper information. The due consent was not taken when the consultations for this project was going on. For instance, out of the 160 square kilometers, around 80 to 84 square kilometers is a tribal reserve. Now this reserve was denotified, and the people in 2022 in November had said that because certain key information facets of this project were not revealed to us, they had in fact taken back their consent. So the social concerns, there are also issues and questions raised about how the Shompen tribe, which is not in close contact with the other groups, how will they cope with the ramifications of this project? Will their traditional way of living, moving around in the island for food and for other resources, will that be impacted? Because there is also a national security angle to this whole issue. So will their movement be restricted? That is a fundamental question. Keeping all these things in mind, that the researchers who have been working there for several years, environmental researchers, anthropological researchers, they've all appealed to the government to reconsider some of the aspects of this project and also give a thought to the due diligence that they feel was not done while clearing this project.
Also, the Nicobar Island, like you said, is largely made up of tropical rainforests. So keeping that in mind, what kind of environmental concerns does this project raise?
As per government, and these are official records and not estimates, these are records which are being presented in the parliament of the country. Nearly 1 million trees are going to be cut, which is around 10 lakh trees in this tropical rainforest, which will naturally have a bearing on the local climate there. This will also affect the endemic bird that we mentioned earlier, which is the Nicobar macaw bird. Now, the interesting thing about this bird is that it creates mounds in the soil, and it basically allows these mounds to hatch the eggs from the worms that these mounds create. So it is estimated that a lot of these nesting sites are going to be affected. Where the port is going to be situated and the beach close to that port, the harbor, natural harbor, the leatherback turtles usually use that coast to make their nesting sites there, and they come from the eastern part of far eastern part of Asia, also Australia coast, and studies show this, and they make their nesting sites on this part of the coast. So it is estimated that the opening of the mouth of this bay, Galathea Bay, which is the place where the port is going to be located, it's estimated that, and studies show that it's going to be affected severely. So there are concerns raised on how it will pan out, what will be the future of these leatherback turtles. And one of the key concerns regarding wildlife conservation and non-compliance of due procedure raised by people working there and also environmentalists working in the mainland has been that the way the denotification of Galathea Bay Wildlife Sanctuary happened was not really ideal way. It was explicitly denotified for the purposes of this project. As per our Indian laws, the body which clears such kind of projects, the National Board for Wildlife, the explicit objective of this board is to also look at wildlife conservation rather than the economic development in such sensitive zones. So it has been alleged that instead of protecting the interests of leatherback turtles in that area, the primacy was given to this project on the grounds of quote-unquote strategic interests.
And talk about what kind of political reactions has the proposal of this project garnered, especially from the opposition.
So one of the main operations, Niharika, came from the Congress party, and last week former Environment Minister and Rajya Sabha MP Jairam Ramesh issued a statement on behalf of the Congress party as the head of their communications department, and he talked about some of the issues that we discussed in the previous segment. He pointed out that the proposed port area is in a seismically volatile zone that has seen subsidence of around 15 feet after the tsunami. Then they also pointed out that the local administration was not consulting the tribal councils of the Great and Little Nicobar Islands adequately as per the legal requirements. They had broadly asked the government to suspend the clearances that were given, regulatory clearances that were granted for this project, until and unless these concerns were addressed.
And in the end, we talk about BJP leaders criticizing the Congress party. On its 49th anniversary, the BJP launched a series of posts on the social media platform X, condemning the Congress party for the state of emergency imposed in 1975 by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. In a post on X, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the mindset responsible for the emergency is very much alive among the same party. In the post, he said, quote, "The mindset that led to the imposition of the emergency is still prevalent among the same party that imposed it. They disguise their disdain for the constitution with token gestures, but the people of India have seen through their antics, which is why they have been repeatedly rejected." Unquote. Senior BJP leader and Union Home Minister Amit Shah also criticized the Congress, accusing the opposition party of crushing the spirit of the constitution multiple times to maintain a certain family in power. Shah even singled out Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, referring to him as the Yuvraj of the party and reminding the public that his grandmother Indira Gandhi had imposed the emergency. Meanwhile, BJP President JP Nanda said that those who claim to be the guardians of Indian democracy today made every effort to suppress voices defending constitutional values during the emergency. The BJP's harsh criticism of the Congress coincided with a coordinated campaign by the opposition parties accusing the government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi of working against the constitution. Responding to the BJP's remarks, Congress leader Mallikarjun Kharge criticized Prime Minister Modi, saying that he keeps digging into the past to hide his shortcomings. He also added that India has been under an undeclared emergency for the past 10 years. He said, quote, breaking up parties, toppling elected governments through the back door, misusing ED, CBI, IT on 95% opposition leaders, putting even chief ministers in jail and spoiling the level playing field by using power before elections. Isn't this an undeclared emergency? Unquote. Kharge added that while Modi speaks of consensus and cooperation, his actions are contrary to this. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.